Get out! 2 words. That's all it took to destroy 23 years of Marcus Webb's life. He stood frozen in the middle of the auto shop, his uniform still wet from the rain, while 40 customers watched his boss rip the name badge from his chest. "You're done, Webb. You hear me? Done." Marcus had been 7 minutes late. 7 minutes because he'd stopped on a dark highway to help an old man whose car had died in the storm. That old man was now standing outside the shop window, watching. And the secret he carried would turn this entire moment upside down. But that satisfying revenge. It wouldn't come satisfying today. First, Marcus Webb's life had to fall completely apart. Comment below which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Part 1. 7 minutes. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. Marcus Webb gripped the steering wheel of his 2004 Ford F-150, squinting through the windshield at the barely visible road ahead. The wipers were shot. He'd been meaning to replace them for 6 months, but 6 months of meaning to didn't pay the bills, and neither did wipers. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A text from Mrs. Patterson, the 68-year-old widow who watched his daughter before school every morning. "Chloe's asking for you. Says she has something important to show you when you get home." Marcus smiled despite himself. Chloe always had something important to show him. A drawing, a rock she'd found, a bug she'd named. At 7 years old, everything was important, and Marcus wouldn't have it any other way. He typed back a quick reply at a red light. "Tell her Daddy will be home by 4. Promise." The light turned green. Marcus accelerated through the intersection, checking the dashboard clock. 5:47 a.m. He'd make it to the shop by 6:00 if traffic stayed clear, maybe even a few minutes early. That's when he saw it. A car sat crooked on the shoulder of Highway 41 hazard lights, blinking weakly through the curtain of rain. The hood was up, steam rising into the cold October air. And standing beside it, completely exposed to the downpour, was an old man. No umbrella, no raincoat, just a thin flannel shirt plastered to his body, white hair matted to his skull. Marcus slowed down. "Keep driving," the voice in his head said. "You can't afford to be late. Frank's been looking for a reason to write you up." But then the old man looked up. Their eyes met through the rain-streaked window, and Marcus saw something that made his chest tighten. Not fear, not anger, just exhaustion. The kind of bone-deep tiredness that comes from being invisible to the world. Marcus pulled over. "Sir, you all right?" The old man turned, squinting through the rain. Up close he looked even worse. Mid-70s at least, maybe older. His hands were shaking, whether from cold or something else Marcus couldn't tell. His glasses were fogged and streaked with water. "Car died," the old man said. His voice was hoarse, barely audible over the rain. 20 minutes ago. No one stopped." Marcus looked back at the highway. Cars flew past their headlights, cutting through the darkness, not one of them slowing down. "You got a phone?" Marcus asked. "Battery's dead." The old man held up an old flip phone. "Couldn't call for help if I wanted to." "Family. Someone I can contact." The old man was quiet for a moment. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe. Or regret. "No," he said finally. "There's no one." Marcus made a decision. "Get in my truck. I'll drive you somewhere safe, then we'll figure out what to do with your car." The old man stared at him. "You don't know me." "No, sir, I don't." "I could be anyone. I could be dangerous." Marcus almost laughed. "With all due respect, sir, you look like a strong wind would knock you over. Now get in before we both drown out here." Duh. The old man's name was Walter. That's all Marcus got out of him during the drive, just Walter. No last name, no details. The old man sat in the passenger seat, wrapped in the emergency blanket Marcus kept behind his seat, shivering, as the truck's heater slowly brought him back to life. "Where do you live?" Marcus asked. East Side, Briarwood Heights. Marcus knew the area. Nice neighborhood. Big houses, manicured lawns. The kind of place where people had garages for their garages. Not the kind of place where you'd expect to find an old man stranded on a highway at 5:30 in the morning. What were you doing out this early? Walter didn't answer immediately. He stared out the window, watching the rain streak across the glass. Couldn't sleep, he said finally. Sometimes I drive when I can't sleep. Helps me think. Marcus understood that. After Sarah died, he'd spent a lot of nights driving nowhere, trying to outrun the silence of an empty bed. I'm sorry about your car, Marcus said. You got a mechanic, someone who can take a look at it. Walter shook his head. Don't even know what's wrong with it. One minute it was running fine, the next. Sounds like the alternator. Or maybe the fuel pump. I'm a mechanic. I could take a look at it for you if you want, after I drop you off. Walter turned to look at him. Really look at him like he was seeing Marcus for the first time. You do that? Sure. It's what I do. But you don't know me. Sir, you keep saying that like it's supposed to change my mind. Someone needs help, you help them. That's just how it works. Walter was quiet for a long moment. Then so softly Marcus almost missed it, he said, Not everyone thinks that way. They pulled into Briarwood Heights at 5:58 a.m. Marcus found the address Walter gave him, a large colonial house with a wraparound porch set back from the road behind a perfectly trimmed hedge. Even in the rain, even in the early morning darkness, it looked expensive. The kind of place Marcus could work his whole life and never afford. This is you? Marcus asked, unable to hide his surprise. Walter nodded. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. You sure you're going to be okay? I'll be fine. Walter opened the door, then paused. The car. You said you could look at it. Give me your number. I'll call you when I get off work. We'll figure out a time. Walter reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card. It was damp from the rain, the edges soft, but the printing was still legible. He handed it to Marcus. My number's on there, but you don't have to do this. You've already done more than enough. Marcus took the card. I'll call you this afternoon. Walter stepped out of the truck. Then he turned back, rain already soaking through his thin shirt again. Marcus. Yes, sir. What's your daughter's name? Marcus blinked, surprised by the question. Chloe. She's 7. Walter smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but it transformed his face. For a moment he didn't look like a tired old man anymore. He looked like someone remembering something precious. Hold on to her, Walter said. Hold on to her tight. And then he was gone, walking up the driveway toward the big house, disappearing into the rain. Marcus looked at the card in his hand. Walter Brennan. Private, no company name, no title, just a phone number. He tucked the card into his shirt pocket and pulled back onto the road. The dashboard clock read 6:02 a.m. He was late. Marcus pulled into the parking lot of Webb & Sons Auto Repair at 6:07 a.m., 7 minutes late. His stomach was already tight as he grabbed his work bag and jogged toward the entrance. 7 minutes wasn't much. Anyone else, any other day, it wouldn't matter. But Frank Harrison had been on his case for weeks now, looking for any excuse to write him up. The shop floor was already busy when Marcus pushed through the door. The smell of motor oil and burned coffee hit him like a wall. Familiar, comfortable. He'd been breathing that smell for 23 years. Danny Rodriguez was underneath a Chevy Silverado, only his legs visible. Mike Chen was at the diagnostic computer running codes on a minivan. Both of them looked up when Marcus walked in. Neither of them smiled. Man, Danny said, sliding out from under the Chevy. Where the hell have you been? Car trouble, Marcus said. Long story. Where's Frank? Danny and Mike exchanged a look, the kind of look that made Marcus's stomach drop. Office, Mike said. He's been asking about you, every 5 minutes. Marcus closed his eyes. How bad? Bad. He's got that look, you know. The one he gets when he's about to make someone's life miserable. Marcus knew the look. He'd seen it plenty of times over the years directed at other people. He'd always been grateful it wasn't directed at him. Until now. "All right," Marcus said, setting down his bag. "Let me clock in, then I'll—" "Way BB." Frank Harrison's voice cut across the shop floor like a chainsaw. Marcus turned. Frank was standing in the doorway of his office, arms crossed, face the color of a bruised tomato. He was a big man, Frank 6'2", 250, with a gut that hung over his belt and hands like catcher's mitts. He'd been a linebacker in college, and he still carried himself like he was about to tackle someone. "My office," Frank said. "Now." The walk to Frank's office felt like a death march. Marcus passed the bay where he'd spent 23 years of his life, the lift where he'd taught Danny how to do his first brake job, the diagnostic station where he'd solved problems that had stumped mechanics half his age, the wall where the photos used to hang photos of his father, of the shop in its glory days, of all the men who had built this place. Frank had taken those photos down last year. "Too cluttered," he'd said. Marcus walked into the office. Frank was already behind his desk, leaning back in his chair, fingers steepled like some kind of Bond villain. "Close the door." Marcus closed it. "Sit." "I'd rather stand." Frank's eyes narrowed. "I said sit." Marcus sat. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Frank just stared at him, that half-smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The smile of a man who knows he has power over someone else and enjoys it. "You know what time it is?" Frank asked finally. 6:12. "And what time does your shift start?" 6. "So you're late." "Yes." "Again." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "This is the first time this month I've been late." "Third time." "The first 2 times were 5 minutes. I called ahead." "Did you call ahead today?" Marcus didn't answer. "Did you?" "No, but I had a good reason." "I don't care about your reasons, Webb." Frank leaned forward, his smile disappearing. "I don't care about your excuses. What I care about is that I have a business to run, and I can't run it with people who don't respect the rules." "I respect the rules. I've been here 23 years, Frank. 23 years. I've never missed a day except when Sarah—" "Don't." Frank held up a hand. "Don't play the dead wife card with me." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. He felt something shift inside him. Something dark. Something angry. "What did you just say?" Frank leaned back unbothered. "You heard me. Every time you screw up, every time I call you out on something, you bring up Sarah. Like her dying gives you some kind of free pass." "Well, it doesn't. Not anymore." Marcus's hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against his thighs, trying to control the rage building in his chest. "You don't get to talk about her," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't get to say her name." "I'll say whatever I want. This is my shop." "This was my father's shop." Frank's smile returned. "Was. Keyword, Marcus. Was. Your father's been dead for 15 years. I've been running this place ever since, and I've done a damn good job of it. Revenue up, cost down, profit margins better than ever. By cutting corners. By replacing experienced mechanics with kids who work for minimum wage. By driving away every customer who's been coming here for decades." Frank shrugged. "Business is business. If you don't like how I run things, you're free to leave." "I'm not leaving." "No." Frank's smile widened. "Then I guess I'll have to make the decision for you." Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him. "What are you saying?" Frank stood up. He walked around the desk, slow, deliberate, enjoying every second of this. "Here's the thing, Marcus. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. You're a relic, a dinosaur. You've been here so long you think you own the place, and that attitude, it's poison. It spreads to the other guys, makes them think they can get away with anything. I work harder than anyone on that floor. Maybe you did, 10 years ago. But now? Now you're just dead weight. Frank reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He held it out to Marcus. What's this? Your termination notice, effective immediately. Marcus didn't take the paper. He stared at it like it was a snake coiled and ready to strike. You can't do this. I just did. I'll fight it. I'll go to the labor board. Go ahead. Frank tossed the paper onto the desk. You were late. That's a terminable offense. I've got it documented 3 instances in the past 2 months. My lawyer already signed off on it. Those were 5 minutes, Frank. 5 minutes each time, and I called ahead. Doesn't matter. Late is late. And today you were 7 minutes late with no call. That's abandonment of your post. I was helping someone. I don't care if you were saving the president. You were late. You broke the rules. And now you're fired. Marcus stood up. His chair scraped against the floor, the sound harsh in the small office. 23 years, he said. 23 years I gave this place. I trained half the mechanics out there. I built relationships with customers who've been coming here since before you bought this shop. And you're throwing all of that away because I was 7 minutes late. Frank's face hardened. You want to know the truth, Marcus? This isn't about 7 minutes. This is about you, your attitude, your constant questioning of how I run things, your little comments to the other guys about how things used to be better. They were better. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Frank stepped closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. You think you're better than me. You've always thought that. Because your daddy built this place because you've been here longer, because you've got some idea in your head about what this shop is supposed to be. I know exactly what this shop is supposed to be. A place where people can trust that their car will be fixed right. A place where the mechanics take pride in their work. A place where I lose money because some old-timer wants to take 3 hours on a job that should take 1, Frank laughed. Wake up, Marcus. This is business, not a charity, not a family, business. Marcus looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time he saw Frank Harrison clearly not as his boss, not as the man who'd bought his father's shop, but as what he truly was. A small man, a scared man. A man who had to tear others down to feel big. You're going to regret this, Marcus said quietly. Frank's smile flickered just for a second. Is that a threat? No, it's the truth. One day you're going to look back on this moment, and you're going to realize what you threw away. And when that day comes, I want you to remember something. What's that? I could have fought you. I could have made this ugly. But I'm not going to because I've got a daughter at home who needs me to be better than this. Marcus picked up the termination notice. I'll clean out my locker. He turned and walked toward the door. Webb. Marcus stopped his hand on the doorknob. Don't expect a reference. Marcus didn't turn around. I wouldn't dream of it. He opened the door and walked out. The shop floor had gone silent. Every mechanic had stopped working. Danny stood frozen by the Silverado. Mike had pushed back from the diagnostic computer. Even the 2 customers waiting in the lounge area were staring through the glass partition. They'd heard everything. Marcus walked to his locker feeling 40 pairs of eyes on his back. His hands were steady as he turned the same combination he'd used for 23 years. 7/23/15. Chloe's birthday. Inside the locker was a time capsule. A spare set of coveralls faded and soft from years of washing. A photo of Chloe from last year's school picture day, her front teeth missing her smile bright enough to light up the world. And tucked into the corner, a card Sarah had given him on their 10th anniversary. To the hardest working man I know, I'm so proud of you. Love, Sarah. Marcus took the photo and the card, left the coveralls. He closed the locker for the last time. Marcus. He turned. Danny was standing there, wrench still in his hand, looking like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. It's okay, Danny. It's not okay. This is bullshit. Everyone knows it's bullshit. Maybe, but it's done. We could talk to him, all of us. Tell him what? That he should change his mind. Frank doesn't change his mind. You know that. Danny looked down at the floor. I'm sorry, man. I'm really sorry. I know. Marcus put a hand on Danny's shoulder. Take care of yourself, all right? And take care of Mike. He looks up to you more than you know. Marcus walked toward the exit. He pushed through the door into the gray October morning. The rain had finally stopped, but the sky was still heavy with clouds pressing down on the world like a weight. He was halfway to his truck when he saw him. An old man stood on the sidewalk across the street. White hair, thin frame, glasses slightly fogged. Walter. Marcus stopped. For a moment he wondered if he was hallucinating. What were the odds? What were the chances that the man he'd helped this morning would be standing here right now, at this exact moment? Walter raised his hand in a small wave. Marcus crossed the street, his mind spinning. Sir, what are you doing here? I found you, Walter said. His voice was different now, stronger, steadier. The trembling old man from the highway was gone. In his place stood someone else entirely. Someone with sharp eyes and a straight back and an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. Found me how? Your truck. I saw the business card on your dashboard when you drove me home. Webb & Sons Auto Repair. Walter nodded toward the shop. I came to thank you properly. But then I saw what happened in there. Marcus felt his face flush with embarrassment. You saw that? I saw a man get fired for being late. Late because he stopped to help a stranger in the rain. Walter's eyes were fixed on Marcus, unblinking. I saw his boss humiliate him in front of everyone. I heard what that man said about your wife. Marcus's throat tightened. It's fine. I'll find another job. No. Walter's voice was firm. It's not fine. Sir, I appreciate your concern, but there's nothing you can do. Frank owns that shop. What he says goes. Walter was quiet for a moment. Then slowly, a smile spread across his face. It wasn't a warm smile. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something you didn't. Does he, Walter asked, does he what? Own that shop? Marcus frowned. Of course he does. He bought it 15 years ago. He bought the business. But the building? Walter tilted his head slightly. Do you know who owns the building, Marcus? Some holding company. Brennan Holdings, I think. Frank leases from them. Brennan Holdings. Walter repeated the name like he was tasting it. Interesting. Sir, I don't understand what you're... Marcus. Walter stepped closer. His eyes behind those fogged glasses were the sharpest eyes Marcus had ever seen. I want you to do something for me. What? Go home. Be with your daughter. Don't do anything rash. Don't contact Frank. Don't try to fight this. Just wait. Wait for what? Walter's smile widened. For me. Before Marcus could respond, a black sedan pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down, revealing a driver in a dark suit. Mr. Brennan, the driver said. Your 9 o'clock is waiting. Marcus felt something cold run down his spine. Mr. Brennan. Brennan Holdings. Walter. No. Mr. Brennan turned back to Marcus. The frail old man from the highway was completely gone now. In his place stood someone else entirely. Someone powerful. Someone dangerous. Someone with a plan. Thank you, Marcus, Walter Brennan said, for stopping when no one else would, for seeing an old man worth helping when everyone else drove past. He reached out and gripped Marcus's hand. His grip was surprisingly strong. I always pay my debts, he said. Always. And then he was gone, sliding into the back of the black sedan, disappearing behind tinted windows. The car pulled away. Marcus stood on the sidewalk, Chloe's photo in one hand, Sarah's card in the other, watching the sedan disappear around the corner. Brennan Holdings, the company that owned the building, the company that Frank Harrison answered to. Marcus looked back at the shop. Through the window, he could see Frank standing at the counter, laughing about something with one of the customers. Happy, satisfied, completely unaware of what was coming. I always pay my debts. Marcus didn't know what Walter Brennan was planning, but he had a feeling Frank Harrison was about to find out. Marcus sat in his truck for a long time after the black sedan disappeared. His hands were still gripping the steering wheel even though the engine was off. Chloe's photo lay on the passenger seat next to Sarah's card, both of them staring up at him like silent witnesses to the worst morning of his life. Brennan Holdings. He'd heard Frank mention the name a few times over the years. Something about the lease, something about building maintenance, something about rent increases. Marcus had never paid much attention. That was the business side of things. Frank's domain. Marcus just fixed cars. But now, I always pay my debts. What did that mean? What was Walter Brennan planning to do? Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Patterson. Chloe's getting ready for school. Everything okay? You're usually here by now. Marcus looked at the time. 6:45 a.m. He was supposed to pick up Chloe, drive her to school, then head back to work. That was the routine. That was how every morning had gone for the past 3 years ever since Sarah died and Marcus became both mother and father. But there was no work to go back to now. He typed a reply with shaking fingers. On my way. Got held up at the shop. He started the truck and pulled out of the parking lot, forcing himself not to look back at the building where he'd spent 23 years of his life. The drive to Mrs. Patterson's house took 12 minutes. 12 minutes of Marcus's mind racing in circles trying to make sense of what had just happened. He'd woken up this morning as a mechanic with a steady job and a paycheck that barely covered the bills. Now he was unemployed with a 7-year-old daughter who depended on him for everything and a mysterious old man who'd promised. What exactly he didn't know, and that uncertainty was almost worse than the firing itself. Mrs. Patterson's house was a small yellow bungalow on Maple Street with a garden gnome by the front door and wind chimes that sang in the breeze. Marcus had known Eleanor Patterson his whole life. She'd been friends with his mother, had watched him grow up, had cried at his wedding, and again at Sarah's funeral. When he'd needed someone to watch Chloe in the mornings, she'd volunteered without hesitation. Your family, she'd said. Family helps family. Marcus knocked on the door. It opened almost immediately, and there was Eleanor, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her eyes already scanning his face with that sharp perception that came from 70 years of reading people. Marcus, what's wrong? He tried to smile. Nothing, just running late. Don't lie to me, boy. I changed your diapers. I know when something's wrong. Before Marcus could respond, a small body hurtled into his legs. Daddy? Chloe wrapped her arms around him, squeezing tight. She was still in her pajamas, pink ones with little horses on them, and her hair was a tangled mess of brown curls. But her smile was bright enough to light up the whole street. Hey, baby girl. Marcus knelt down and pulled her into a proper hug, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. I missed you. I missed you too. Mrs. Patterson made pancakes. I saved you one, but then I ate it. Sorry. Marcus laughed despite himself. That's okay. I'm not hungry anyway. Chloe pulled back and looked at him with those big brown eyes. Sarah's eyes and her smile faded. Daddy, why do you look sad? Kids always knew. No matter how hard you tried to hide it, they always knew. I'm not sad, sweetheart. Just tired. You're always tired. Chloe reached up and touched his face. Your eyes are red. Were you crying? No, baby. It's just the rain. It stopped raining. Marcus had no answer for that. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed. Chloe, honey, why don't you go get dressed for school? Let me talk to your daddy for a minute. Chloe looked between them, clearly sensing that something was happening, but not sure what. Finally, she nodded and ran back inside her bare feet, slapping against the hardwood floor. Eleanor stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind her. "All right," she said. "Talk." Marcus ran a hand over his face. "I got fired." The words hung in the air between them. Eleanor didn't gasp, didn't exclaim, didn't do any of the things Marcus expected. She just nodded slowly, like she'd been waiting for this news for a long time. "Frank?" "Yeah." "What happened?" "I was late. 7 minutes. He said it was the last straw." 7 minutes. Eleanor shook her head. "That man's been looking for an excuse to get rid of you ever since he bought your father's shop. You know that, right?" "I know. Your father would be rolling in his grave if he knew what Frank Harrison did to that place. To you." Marcus didn't respond. He was thinking about the photos Frank had taken down. The ones of his father standing in front of the shop on opening day, beaming with pride. The ones of Marcus as a little boy sitting on a stack of tires, pretending to be a race car driver. All of it boxed up and shoved into a storage closet. Too cluttered. "What are you going to do?" Eleanor asked. "I don't know. Find another job, I guess. There are other shops in Columbus. And in the meantime, I've got some savings. Enough for maybe 2 months if I'm careful." He paused. "Maybe less." Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. "You listen to me, Marcus Webb. You're not alone in this. Whatever you need, money, help with Chloe, a place to stay, you come to me. You hear?" "Eleanor, I can't. You can and you will. That's not a request. That's an order." She squeezed his hand. "Sarah would want you to accept help when you need it. She told me that once you know. Said you were the most stubborn man she'd ever met, and that if anything ever happened to her, I should make sure you didn't try to carry everything alone." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "She said that, word for word, about 3 months before the accident." Eleanor's eyes glistened. It was like she knew. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of memory pressing down on both of them. Finally, Marcus took a deep breath. "I should get Chloe to school." "Yes, you should. And then you should go home and rest. You look like you haven't slept in a week." "I haven't." "Marcus." I know. He managed a small smile. "I'll try." The door opened and Chloe emerged, dressed in her school uniform navy blue skirt, white blouse hair, now brushed and pulled back with a pink headband. She was clutching her backpack straps with both hands, bouncing on her heels with barely contained energy. "Ready, Daddy?" "All right, let's go." Marcus turned back to Eleanor. "Thank you. For everything. Just remember what I said. You're not alone." Marcus nodded. He took Chloe's hand and walked back to the truck, lifting her into the passenger seat and buckling her seatbelt. "Daddy." "Yeah, baby." "Are you going to work after you drop me off?" Marcus hesitated. He didn't want to lie to her, but he also didn't want to burden a 7-year-old with adult problems. "Not today," he said finally. "I have the day off." Chloe's face lit up. "Really? Can we go to the park later? Can we get ice cream?" "We'll see." "That means no." Marcus laughed. "That means we'll see." He started the truck and pulled away from Eleanor's house, watching her wave from the porch in his rearview mirror. Chloe chattered the whole way to school about her friend Emma, about the spelling test she had today, about the dream she'd had last night where she could fly. Marcus listened to every word, letting her voice wash over him like a balm. This was why he got up every morning. This was why he worked double shifts and skipped meals and drove a truck that was falling apart. For her. For the little girl with Sarah's eyes and his stubbornness, who still believed the world was full of magic and possibility. He couldn't let her down. He wouldn't. Whatever it took, he would find a way. The school drop-off line was chaos as usual. Cars inching forward, parents honking kids running across the parking lot with backpacks bouncing. Marcus pulled up to the curb and put the truck in park. "All right, sweetheart. Have a good day. Chloe unbuckled her seatbelt, but didn't move. She was looking at him with that expression again, the one that said she knew something was wrong, even if she couldn't name it. Daddy. Yeah. I love you. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. I love you too, baby, so much. More than all the stars. It was their thing, their little ritual. Sarah had started it when Chloe was a baby, and Marcus had kept it going after she was gone. More than all the stars in all the galaxies in the whole entire universe. Chloe smiled satisfied with the answer. She leaned over and kissed his cheek, then scrambled out of the truck and ran toward the school entrance, turning back once to wave. Marcus waved back. He watched until she disappeared through the doors. Then he put the truck in drive and headed home, the silence of the cab pressing in around him like a physical weight. The apartment was quiet when Marcus walked in. It was always quiet these days. 3 bedrooms felt too big for just him and Chloe, but he couldn't bring himself to move. This was where he and Sarah had built their life together. This was where Chloe had taken her first steps, spoken. Her first words celebrated her first birthday with frosting all over her face and joy in her eyes. Every corner held a memory. The kitchen where Sarah used to cook Sunday dinners. The living room where they'd dance to old Motown records. The hallway where Chloe's growth chart was still marked on the wall, each line a milestone, each date a moment in time. Marcus couldn't leave. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He dropped his keys on the counter and sank onto the couch staring at the ceiling. His mind was racing, jumping from thought to thought like a stone skipping across water. What am I going to do? How am I going to pay the bills? What about Chloe's school? Her doctor's appointments? Her birthday next month? He'd been saving for her birthday party. Nothing fancy. Just a few friends, a cake, maybe a trip to the zoo. But now that money might need to go toward rent, or groceries, or the electric bill that was already 2 weeks overdue. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened the calculator app. He started adding up numbers, trying to figure out how long his savings would last. Rent, $1,200. Utilities, $150. Groceries, $300. Car insurance, $180. Gas, $100. Phone, $75. Chloe's school supplies, clothes, activities. He stopped calculating. The numbers were making him sick. His phone buzzed. An unknown number. Marcus stared at it for a moment, then answered. Hello, Marcus Webb. A woman's voice, professional and crisp. Yes? Please hold for Mr. Brennan. There was a click, then silence, then another click. Marcus. Walter Brennan's voice came through the line, strong and clear. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Marcus sat up straighter. No, sir. I was at home. Good. I wanted to check in on you. Make sure you were all right after this morning. I'm fine, sir. Just trying to figure out my next move. Have you applied for any jobs yet? Not yet. It's only been a few hours. Don't. Marcus frowned. Don't what? Don't apply for any jobs. Not yet. Mr. Brennan, with all due respect, I have a daughter to support. I can't just sit around waiting for... I know you have a daughter. Chloe Wright. 7 years old. Brown hair, brown eyes. Attends Jefferson Elementary on Oak Street. A chill ran down Marcus's spine. How do you know all that? I know a lot of things, Marcus. It's part of my job. There was a pause. I'm not trying to frighten you. I just want you to understand that I take this seriously. What happened to you this morning, it wasn't right. And I intend to make it right. How? I'm still working on that. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Marcus thought about the question. Could he trust this man? This stranger he'd met less than 12 hours ago. But then he thought about what Walter had said on the sidewalk. I always pay my debts. There had been something in his eyes when he'd said it. Something fierce. Something true. Yes, sir, Marcus said. I can trust you. Good. I'm going to ask you to do something for me, and I need you to do it without asking questions. What is it? I need you to come to my office tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp. I'll send a car for you. Your office. Brennan Holdings headquarters, downtown Columbus on High Street. My assistant will meet you in the lobby. Marcus's head was spinning. Mr. Brennan, I don't understand. What's this about? Tomorrow, Marcus. All will be explained tomorrow. Another pause. In the meantime, go be with your daughter. Take her to the park, get ice cream, enjoy the day. How did you know she asked for ice cream? Walter chuckled softly. I didn't. But that's what my granddaughter always asks for. I assumed it was a universal request. You have a granddaughter. The line went quiet for a moment. When Walter spoke again, his voice was different, softer, sadder. I did, once. He cleared his throat. Tomorrow, Marcus, 9 a.m. Don't be late. The line went dead. Marcus sat there, phone still pressed to his ear, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Walter Brennan, the frail old man he'd rescued from the rain, was turning out to be someone else entirely. Someone with resources. Someone with power. Someone with secrets. And tomorrow, Marcus was going to find out exactly what that meant. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Marcus tried to sleep, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. He tried to eat, but his stomach was in knots. He tried to watch TV, but he couldn't focus on anything. Finally, at 2:30, he drove to Chloe's school and picked her up early. The front office gave him a questioning look, but he just said it was a family matter, and they let her go. Daddy. Chloe ran into his arms the moment she saw him. You're early. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, sweetheart. I just missed you. You saw me this morning. I know, but I missed you anyway. They drove to the park, the one with the big wooden playground and the pond where ducks gathered for breadcrumbs. Marcus sat on a bench while Chloe ran and climbed and swung, her laughter ringing out across the grass like music. He watched her trying to memorize every moment. The way she pumped her legs on the swing, trying to go higher and higher. The way she talked to herself while she played, making up stories about princesses and dragons. The way she kept looking back at him, making sure he was still there. I'm still here, baby. I'll always be here. After the park, they got ice cream. Chloe chose mint chocolate chip, her favorite. Marcus got vanilla because he didn't really taste it anyway. Daddy? Yeah. Why aren't you at work? Marcus took a breath. He'd been dreading this conversation all day. I told you, sweetheart, I had the day off. But you never have days off, not on weekdays. She was too smart, just like her mother. Chloe, I need to tell you something, and I need you to be a big girl about it. Okay. Chloe's face went serious. She set down her ice cream cone and looked at him with those big brown eyes. Okay. I don't work at the shop anymore. You mean the place where Grandpa used to work? Yeah, that place. Why not? Marcus struggled to find the right words. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements, and sometimes those disagreements mean that things have to change. Did you have a disagreement with your boss? Something like that. Chloe was quiet for a moment, processing this information with the careful seriousness that only children can manage. Are you sad? A little? Are you scared? Marcus hesitated. He wanted to lie to tell her everything was fine, that there was nothing to worry about. But Sarah had always believed in honesty, even with difficult things. A little, he admitted. Chloe reached across the table and put her small hand over his. It's okay to be scared, Daddy. That's what you always tell me. You say that being scared doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're about to do something brave. Marcus felt tears prick at his eyes. You remember that? I remember everything you tell me. She squeezed his hand. We're going to be okay, Daddy. I know it. How do you know? Chloe smiled that bright, beautiful smile that was so much like Sarah's, it made his heart ache. Because you're my daddy, and my daddy can do anything. That night, Marcus tucked Chloe into bed and read her favorite story, the one about the little bear who gets lost in the woods but finds his way home by following the stars. She fell asleep before he finished, her breathing slow and steady, her face peaceful. He sat on the edge of her bed for a long time, watching her sleep. "You're my daddy, and my daddy can do anything." He hoped she was right, because right now, sitting in the dark, he had no idea what he was going to do. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Car will arrive at 8:30 a.m. Be ready. WB." Marcus read the message 3 times. Then he set down his phone, kissed Chloe's forehead, and walked to his own room. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep that wouldn't come. Tomorrow, everything would change. He could feel it deep in his bones. He just didn't know if it would change for better or for worse. At precisely 8:30 the next morning, a black sedan pulled up in front of Marcus's apartment building. He'd been ready since 700's, dressed in the only suit he owned, the one he'd worn to Sarah's funeral. It still fit more or less, though it was tight across the shoulders, and the pants were a little short. He'd had Chloe help him pick out a tie, and she'd chosen the blue one with tiny yellow stars. "For good luck," she'd said. Mrs. Patterson had come early to watch Chloe, asking no questions, just giving Marcus a hug and whispering, "You've got this," in his ear. Now standing on the curb, Marcus watched the sedan's rear door open. A young woman stepped out. Mid-30s, sharp suit, tablet, computer in hand. She looked like the kind of person who ran marathons before breakfast and closed million-dollar deals before lunch. "Mr. Webb." "That's me." "I'm Diana Chen, Mr. Brennan's executive assistant. Please come with me." Marcus climbed into the sedan. The interior was all leather and chrome, cleaner than any car he'd ever worked on. Diana slid in beside him and tapped the driver's shoulder. "Headquarters." The car pulled away from the curb. "Mr. Brennan is looking forward to meeting with you." Diana set her eyes on her tablet. "He's been quite animated since yesterday." "Animated?" "He doesn't usually get personally involved in individual personnel matters. This situation has captured his attention in a way I haven't seen before." "I don't even understand what's happening," Marcus admitted. "Yesterday I was a mechanic. Today I'm riding in a car that costs more than my apartment." Diana looked up from her tablet and smiled, a real smile, not a professional one. "Mr. Webb, I've worked for Walter Brennan for 11 years. In that time I've seen him do a lot of unexpected things, but I've never seen him this determined." She paused. "Whatever happened between you two yesterday morning, it made an impression. I just helped him when his car broke down, that's all. Sometimes that's all it takes." They rode in silence for a while, the city passing by outside the tinted windows. Marcus watched the familiar streets transform into unfamiliar ones as they moved from his neighborhood into downtown Columbus. The buildings got taller, the cars got nicer, the people on the sidewalks walked faster. Finally, the sedan pulled up in front of a gleaming glass tower. The words, "Brennan Holdings," were etched into the stone above the entrance in letters 3 feet tall. "We're here," Diana said, opening her door. "Follow me." The lobby was all marble and steel, with ceilings so high they made Marcus feel like an ant. People in expensive suits hurried past, clutching phones and tablets and coffee cups, their footsteps echoing in the vast space. Diana led him to a private elevator. She pressed her thumb to a scanner, and the doors slid open. "This elevator goes directly to the executive floor," she explained. "Mr. Brennan's office is at the end of the hall." The elevator rose so smoothly, Marcus barely felt it move. When the doors opened again, he stepped out into another world entirely. The executive floor was quiet, carpeted, decorated with art that probably cost more than Marcus made in a year. Diana led him past a reception desk, past a conference room with a table that could seat 30, past offices with views of the entire city. Finally, she stopped in front of a set of double doors. "Mr. Brennan is waiting for you inside." She paused. Mr. Webb. Yes. Whatever happens in there, I think you'll find that Mr. Brennan is a man of his word. She opened the doors and stepped aside. Marcus walked in. The office was enormous, but somehow it felt warm. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling. A fireplace crackled in one corner. And standing by the window, silhouetted against the morning sun, was Walter Brennan. But this wasn't the Walter Brennan Marcus had met on Highway 41. This man wore a tailored suit that probably cost more than Marcus's truck. His white hair was neatly combed, his glasses polished, his posture ramrod straight. He turned as Marcus entered and smiled. "Marcus, thank you for coming." "Yes, sir." "Please sit. We have a lot to discuss." Marcus sat in one of the leather chairs facing the desk. Walter walked over and took the chair beside him, not behind the desk, but beside him like an equal. "I imagine you have questions," Walter said. "About 1,000 of them." "Then let me start by explaining who I am. Really." Walter leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "I built Brennan Holdings from nothing. Started with one auto parts store in 1975, grew it into what you see today. 47 auto repair shops, 12 parts distribution centers, manufacturing facilities in 3 states. At last count, we employ over 2,000 people." Marcus tried to process these numbers. "So when you said you owned the building..." "I own the building. I own the land it sits on. I own the lease agreement Frank Harrison signed 5 years ago." Walter's eyes hardened. "I own everything. Why didn't you tell me yesterday on the highway?" "Because I wanted to see what kind of man you were, and I didn't want my identity to influence your behavior." Walter smiled slightly. "You passed the test, Marcus, with flying colors." "Test? I wasn't stranded on that highway by accident. My car didn't break down randomly." Walter paused. "I was conducting what I call a character audit. I do them from time to time at businesses I own. I disguise myself, create a situation, and see how people respond." Marcus felt a strange sensation, something between anger and admiration. "You were testing me." "I was testing everyone. The 40 cars that drove past without stopping. The man at the gas station who refused to let me use his phone. The police officer who told me to figure it out yourself." Walter's jaw tightened. "I was testing humanity, Marcus, and humanity was failing, until you. I just did what anyone would do." "No, you did what very few people do anymore. You stopped. You helped. You didn't ask who I was or what I could do for you. You simply saw someone in need and responded with kindness." Walter leaned forward. "Do you know how rare that is?" Marcus didn't know how to respond. "And then," Walter continued, "I watched what happened at that shop. I saw how Frank Harrison treated you. I heard the things he said, and I made a decision." "What decision?" Walter stood and walked to his desk. He picked up a folder and handed it to Marcus. "Open it." Marcus opened the folder. Inside were documents, lots of them, legal papers, financial reports, building permits. He didn't understand most of it. "What am I looking at?" "Frank Harrison's lease agreement, inspection reports, employment records, financial audits." Walter's voice was cold now, hard as steel. "Frank Harrison has been violating the terms of his lease for 3 years. He's been falsifying inspection reports, cutting corners on safety equipment, and most importantly, he's been skimming money from the business." Marcus looked up. "Skimming?" "About $50,000 over the past 2 years. He's been inflating repair costs, charging customers for work that was never done, and pocketing the difference." "I had no idea." "Neither did most of his employees. But I've had investigators looking into his operation for 6 months. I was planning to deal with him eventually, but after what happened yesterday..." Walter sat back down, his eyes meeting Marcus's. "I've decided to accelerate the timeline." "What does that mean?" Walter smiled, and for the first time Marcus saw something dangerous in that smile. Something calculating. something that made him very glad Walter Brennan was on his side. It means, Marcus, that Frank Harrison is about to learn a very important lesson. What lesson? That you should never ever mistreat good people in front of the man who owns everything you have. Marcus stared at him. What are you going to do? Walter reached out and closed the folder in Marcus's hands. I'm going to give you a choice. Marcus sat perfectly still, the folder heavy in his hands. A choice, he repeated. Yes. Walter leaned back in his chair, watching Marcus with those sharp, calculating eyes. I could simply terminate Frank Harrison's lease. Force him out of the building. Let him scramble to find another location while I bring in someone else to run the shop. But that wouldn't be justice. That would just be business. Walter stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. I've spent 50 years in this industry, Marcus. I've seen good people crushed by bad systems. I've seen hard workers thrown away like garbage, while lazy, corrupt men climb to the top. And for a long time, I told myself, that's just how the world works. He turned back to face Marcus. I don't believe that anymore. What do you believe? I believe that every once in a while, the universe gives us a chance to make things right. To balance the scales. Walter's voice dropped. You stopped for me on that highway, Marcus. You didn't know me. You didn't owe me anything. But you stopped anyway because that's who you are. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. It wasn't a big deal. It was the biggest deal. Because it showed me something I'd forgotten existed. Walter walked back to his chair and sat down, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. Now, I want to give you something in return. Something more than just your job back. What? The shop. Marcus blinked. I'm sorry. Webb & Sons Auto Repair. Your father's shop. I want to give it to you. For a long moment, Marcus couldn't speak. He couldn't even breathe. The words didn't make sense, like Walter was speaking a foreign language. That's impossible. Why? Because I'm just a mechanic. I don't know how to run a business. I don't have the money to buy it. You wouldn't be buying it. Walter held up a hand. I would be transferring the lease to you, rent-free for the first 2 years, then a graduated payment plan based on revenue. I'd also provide a startup fund for equipment upgrades and inventory. Marcus shook his head. Mr. Brennan, that's incredibly generous, but I can't accept that. It's too much. It's not charity, Marcus. It's an investment. Walter's eyes were steady. I've read your personnel file. 23 years at that shop. Perfect attendance until this month. Customer satisfaction scores higher than any other mechanic in the building. Letters from clients praising your work, your honesty, your integrity. Frank never told me about any letters. I'm sure he didn't, because those letters made him look bad by comparison. Walter picked up another folder from his desk and handed it to Marcus. Read them. These are from the past year alone. Marcus opened the folder. Inside were printed emails and handwritten notes, dozens of them. Marcus fixed my transmission when 3 other shops said it couldn't be done. He's a miracle worker. I've been bringing my cars to Marcus for 15 years. He's the only mechanic I trust. Marcus stayed late on a Friday night to finish my daughter's car so she could drive to college. He didn't charge extra. He's a good man. Marcus felt his throat tighten as he read. He'd had no idea. All these years, he'd just been doing his job, never expecting recognition or praise. And Frank had hidden all of it. This is what you built, Marcus. Walter's voice was soft now. This is your legacy, not Frank Harrison's, yours. Marcus closed the folder. His hands were trembling. Why? He asked. Why are you doing this? Walter was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was different. Older, sadder, weighted with something Marcus couldn't name. Because I had a son once. Marcus looked up. His name was Michael. He was a good man. Kind, honest, hardworking. Everything a father could want. Walter's gaze drifted to the window. He worked in one of my shops. Started at the bottom just like you. I wanted him to learn the business from the ground up, understand what it meant to get his hands dirty. What happened to him? He had a manager. A man I trusted. A man I thought was fair and competent. Walter's jaw tightened. That man was threatened by Michael. Saw him as competition. So he made Michael's life hell. Criticized everything he did. Took credit for his work. Humiliated him in front of the other employees. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The story sounded familiar. Michael came to me once, Walter continued. Told me what was happening, asked me to intervene. He paused. I told him to handle it himself. I told him that if he couldn't deal with a difficult boss, he'd never survive in the business world. I told him to toughen up. What happened? Walter's voice cracked. He killed himself. 3 months later, left a note saying he was sorry he couldn't be stronger. The office went silent. Marcus didn't know what to say. There was nothing to say. That was 12 years ago, Walter said finally, and not a day goes by that I don't think about what I could have done differently, what I should have said. He turned back to Marcus, and his eyes were wet. When I saw Frank Harrison treating you the way that manager treated my son. When I heard the things he said, I made a promise to myself. I promised that this time I wouldn't look away. This time I would do something. Marcus sat with that for a moment. The weight of it. The pain behind it. I'm sorry, he said quietly. About your son. Thank you. Walter wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. But I didn't tell you that story for sympathy. I told you because I want you to understand why this matters to me. Why you matter to me. I'm not your son, Mr. Brennan. No. But you're someone's father. And that little girl of yours, Chloe, she needs you. She needs you to be successful, to be stable, to be happy. Walter leaned forward. I can help make that happen. If you let me. Marcus looked down at the folders in his hands. The lease documents. The customer letters. The evidence of Frank's corruption. What about Frank? He asked. What happens to him? That depends. On what? On you. Walter stood and walked to his desk. He pressed a button on his phone. Diana, please bring in the documents we discussed. A moment later, the office door opened, and Diana entered carrying a thick stack of papers. She set them on the desk and left without a word. Walter picked up the top document and held it out to Marcus. This is a formal complaint against Frank Harrison, detailing his violations of the lease agreement, his financial misconduct, and his pattern of employee abuse. If you sign this as a witness, I can begin immediate termination proceedings. Frank will be out of the building by the end of the week. Marcus took the document but didn't sign it. And the other option? Walter set down a second document. This is a meeting request. I've scheduled a face-to-face confrontation with Frank Harrison tomorrow morning at the shop. You would be there. I would be there. The employees would be there. And I would give Frank one chance to explain himself, apologize, and agree to a complete restructuring of how he operates. Why would you give him a chance after everything he's done? Because everyone deserves a chance to do the right thing, Marcus. Even people who don't deserve it. Walter's eyes met his. That's what you showed me on that highway. You didn't know I was worth saving. You saved me anyway. Marcus stared at the two documents. 2 paths, 2 futures. Which one would you choose? He asked. It doesn't matter what I would choose. This is your decision, your life, your shop, your legacy. Walter sat back down. But I'll tell you this, whatever you decide, I'll support you, 100%. Marcus thought about Frank Harrison, about the way he'd sneered when he said dead wife card, about the 23 years of disrespect and condescension, about the morning he'd ripped the badge from Marcus's chest in front of everyone. Part of him wanted revenge, wanted to sign that complaint and watch Frank lose everything the way Marcus had lost everything. But then he thought about Chloe, about what Sarah would say, about the kind of man he wanted to be. The meeting. Marcus said finally. I choose the meeting. Walter smiled. It was a small smile, but there was pride in it. I thought you might. Marcus drove home that afternoon with his head spinning. He'd spent 3 hours in Walter's office going over details, reviewing plans, asking questions he never thought he'd need to ask. Business licenses, insurance requirements, supplier contracts, employee management. By the end, his brain felt like it had been run through a blender. But underneath the overwhelm, there was something else. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. When he pulled into the parking lot of his apartment building, Chloe was waiting on the front steps with Mrs. Patterson. The moment she saw his truck, she jumped up and ran toward him. Daddy! Daddy! You're home! Marcus barely had time to get out of the truck before she slammed into his legs, wrapping her arms around him in a fierce hug. Hey, sweetheart. Miss me? Always. She looked up at him with those big brown eyes. How was your meeting? Was it good? Are you happy? Marcus knelt down so they were eye to eye. It was good, baby. It was really good. Does that mean you have a job again? Marcus hesitated. How did you explain something this complicated to a 7-year-old? It means things are going to change. Good changes, I think. But it's going to take some time to figure it all out. Chloe nodded seriously like she understood perfectly. Daddy. Yeah. I'm proud of you. The words hit Marcus like a punch to the chest. He pulled Chloe into a hug and held her tight, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. I'm proud of you too, baby. So proud. That night, after Chloe was asleep, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with a beer he wasn't really drinking, staring at the folder Walter had given him. Inside were copies of everything. The lease documents, the customer letters, the evidence against Frank, and a single sheet of paper with tomorrow's schedule printed on it. 9:00 a.m. Meeting at Webb & Sons, auto repair attendees. Walter Brennan, Marcus Webb, Frank Harrison, all shop employees. Purpose discussion of ownership, transition, and operational restructuring. Marcus read those words over and over, trying to make them feel real. His phone buzzed. A text from Danny. Yo, heard something's going down tomorrow. Frank's been freaking out all day. You know anything? Marcus typed back. Be at the shop by 8:30. You'll want to see this. See what? Justice. He set down the phone and picked up the folder again. His eyes landed on one of the customer letters from a woman named Patricia Gonzalez. My husband passed away 2 years ago, and I didn't know the first thing about cars. Marcus took me under his wing. He taught me how to check my oil change. A tire recognizes when something sounds wrong. He never made me feel stupid for not knowing things. He never tried to upsell me on repairs I didn't need. He just helped me because that's the kind of person he is. If there were more people like Marcus Webb in the world, it would be a much better place. Marcus set down the letter, his vision blurring. 23 years. He'd spent 23 years in that shop, day after day just doing his job. He'd never thought of it as anything special. He'd never expected anyone to notice. But they had noticed, all of them. They'd just never had a chance to tell him. Until now. Marcus picked up his beer, finally took a sip, and made a decision. Tomorrow, he wasn't going to that meeting as a victim. He wasn't going to stand there and let Walter fight his battles for him. He was going to walk into that shop as the man those customers believed him to be. The man Sarah had married. The man Chloe looked up to. He was going to walk in as Marcus Webb. And Frank Harrison was finally going to see exactly who he'd thrown away. The morning came faster than Marcus expected. He woke at 5:00 a.m., 2 hours before his alarm, his heart already racing. He lay in bed for a while, staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios in his head. What would Frank say? What would the other employees think? What if Walter changed his mind? What if this all fell apart? He forced himself out of bed and into the shower. The hot water helped clear his head, washing away the doubts and fears, leaving only determination. He put on the suit again, the funeral suit, the only one he owned, but this time it felt different. This time, it felt like armor. Chloe was still asleep when he left. He'd arranged for Mrs. Patterson to take her to school, explaining that he had an important meeting that couldn't wait. "Go get him, Tiger," Eleanor had said, squeezing his hand. The black sedan was waiting outside at 8:15. Diana was in the back seat, tablet in hand as always. "Good morning, Mr. Webb." "Good morning." "Mr. Brennan is already at the shop. He arrived at 7:30 to make preparations." "Preparations?" Diana smiled slightly. "You'll see." The drive took 15 minutes. 15 minutes of silence of Marcus watching the familiar streets pass by, of his heart beating louder and louder in his chest. When the sedan pulled into the parking lot of Webb & Sons Auto Repair, Marcus saw something that made him catch his breath. The shop was surrounded by cars. Not customer cars, employee cars. Danny's pickup, Mike's Honda. Vehicles belonging to mechanics who weren't supposed to be there for another hour. They'd all come early. "Mr. Brennan called them last night," Diana said, answering his unspoken question. "Told them there was going to be an important announcement this morning. He didn't say what." Marcus stepped out of the sedan. The morning air was cold-biting, but he barely felt it. The shop door opened, and Danny came running out. "Marcus, holy shit, man, what is going on? There's some old guy in there who says he owns the building, and Frank looks like he's about to have a heart attack and—" "Danny?" Marcus put a hand on his friend's shoulder. "Take a breath." Danny took a breath. Okay. But seriously, what the hell is happening? Come inside. You're about to find out." The shop floor was crowded. Every employee was there. Danny, Mike, the two part-time mechanics. Even old Joe from the parts department, who usually didn't come in until noon. They were gathered in a loose semicircle near the service counter, speaking in hushed voices, shooting nervous glances toward the office. And standing in the center of it all, looking like a general surveying his troops, was Walter Brennan. He'd traded his business suit for something more casual: khakis, a button-down shirt, a light jacket. But there was nothing casual about his presence. He dominated the room simply by standing in it. Frank Harrison stood off to the side, his face pale, his hands shaking. He looked like a man who'd just been told he had a terminal disease. When Marcus walked through the door, everything stopped. Danny and Mike turned to look at him. The other employees followed. Even Frank's head snapped up, his eyes wide with something that might have been fear. But Marcus's attention was on Walter. The old man smiled. "Marcus, thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it." Walter turned to address the room. His voice carried easily, filling the space without effort. "For those of you who don't know me, my name is Walter Brennan. I'm the founder and CEO of Brennan Holdings, which owns this building and approximately 50 other commercial properties throughout the Midwest." A murmur ran through the crowd. Danny's jaw dropped. "I'm here today because of something that happened 2 days ago. Something that most of you witnessed." Walter's gaze swept across the room, landing briefly on each face. "I'm talking about the termination of Marcus Webb." Silence. Complete, absolute silence. "I've known Marcus for exactly 48 hours, Walter continued. "But in that time I've learned more about him than I know about people I've worked with for decades. I've learned that he's honest, that he's hardworking, that he treats people with dignity and respect regardless of who they are or what they can do for him." Walter paused, letting the words sink in. "I've also learned how he was treated by his employer, how he was humiliated in front of his colleagues, how his 23 years of loyalty were dismissed as dead weight, how he was thrown away like garbage for the crime of being 7 minutes late." Frank opened his mouth to speak, but Walter silenced him with a look. "I'm not finished, Mr. Harrison." Frank's mouth snapped shut. Marcus Webb was late that morning because he stopped on a highway to help a stranger whose car had broken down. That stranger was me. Walter smiled grimly. I was conducting what I call a character audit, disguising myself as someone in need to see how people would respond. 41 cars drove past me without stopping. Marcus Webb was the only one who pulled over. The employees exchanged glances. Danny was staring at Marcus with something like awe. "And then I came here," Walter said. "I wanted to see what kind of workplace had produced a man like Marcus. I wanted to meet his employer, see how he was treated, understand what made him who he is." He turned to face Frank directly. "What I found disgusted me." Frank's face went from pale to gray. "Mr. Brennan, I can explain. Can you explain the falsified inspection reports, the inflated repair costs, the $50,000 you've embezzled from this business over the past 2 years?" The shop went dead silent. Even the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to stop. Frank's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. That's not true. I don't know where you got that information, but I got it from forensic accountants who've been reviewing your books for 6 months. Walter reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. "I have copies of every falsified invoice, every inflated charge, every dollar you stole from customers who trusted you." He dropped the folder on the counter with a thud that echoed through the silent shop. "I also have statements from former employees who left because of your behavior, customers who switched to other shops because they felt cheated, health inspectors who noted violations that were never corrected." Frank was shaking now, his hands trembling at his sides. "You can't prove any of this." "I already have." Walter's voice was ice. "The question now is what to do about it." He turned back to the assembled employees. "I could terminate Mr. Harrison's lease immediately. I could call the police and have him arrested for fraud. I could sue him for breach of contract and make sure he never works in this industry again." The employees were watching breathless. Danny's hands were clenched into fists. "But I'm not going to do any of that." Walter paused. "Not yet." Frank's head snapped up. "What?" "I'm giving you one chance, Mr. Harrison. One chance to do the right thing. Not because you deserve it, you don't, but because someone I respect very much believes that everyone deserves a chance to be better." Walter looked at Marcus. Marcus stepped forward, his heart pounding, his voice steady. "Frank," he said, "I could have buried you. I could have let Mr. Brennan destroy everything you have, and part of me wanted to. After what you said about Sarah, after everything you've done." Frank's eyes were wide, desperate. "Marcus, let me finish." Marcus's voice was quiet but firm. "I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the people in this room, for Danny and Mike and everyone else who depends on this shop for their livelihood. They don't deserve to suffer because of your mistakes." He took a breath. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to step down as manager. You're going to repay every dollar you stole, every single dollar over the next 5 years. And you're going to work here as a regular employee under my supervision." Frank stared at him. "Your supervision? Mr. Brennan is transferring the lease to me. As of today, I'm the new manager of Webb & Sons Auto Repair." The room erupted. Danny let out a whoop of joy. Mike started clapping. The other employees joined in the applause building until it filled the shop like thunder. Frank stood frozen, his face cycling through emotions: shock, anger, humiliation, defeat. "This is insane," he said finally. "You can't do this." "Actually, he can." Walter's voice cut through the noise. "And he is. The only question is whether you accept these terms or face the alternative." "What alternative?" "Termination, prosecution, financial ruin." Walter's eyes were merciless. "Your choice, Mr. Harrison." Frank looked around the room, at the employees who were celebrating his downfall, at Walter, who held all the cards, at Marcus, who had somehow impossibly gone from fired mechanic to shop manager in the space of 48 hours. His shoulders slumped. "Fine," he said, his voice barely audible. "I accept." Walter nodded. "Smart choice." He turned to Marcus. "The shop is yours, Marcus. Do with it what you will. Marcus looked around at the familiar space, the lifts where he'd spent 23 years, the tools he knew like extensions of his own hands, the people who had been his colleagues and were now his employees, his father's shop, his shop now. "Thank you," he said to Walter. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't." Walter smiled. "That's why I chose you." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Marcus." "Yes. I expect a full report on operations by the end of the month, with recommendations for improvement." His eyes twinkled. "You work for me now. That means you have to do actual work." Marcus laughed a real laugh, the first one in days. "Yes, sir." Walter nodded and walked out into the morning light. The shop was quiet for a moment after he left. Then Danny broke the silence. "Holy shit, Marcus! Holy shit!" Marcus turned to face his employees. His employees now, and took a deep breath. "All right, everyone. We've got cars to fix and a business to rebuild. Let's get to work." Danny grinned. "You heard the man. Back to work." The employees dispersed, still buzzing with excitement, still processing what had just happened. Frank slunk toward the back of the shop, his head down, his pride shattered. Marcus watched him go, feeling something he hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, not triumph. Pity. Danny appeared at his elbow. "You okay, boss?" "Boss." The word felt strange, foreign. "Yeah," Marcus said. "I think I am." "What you did there, giving Frank a second chance. Most people wouldn't have done that." "I know." "Why did you—" Marcus thought about the question, about Walter's story, about Michael, about all the second chances he'd been given in his own life. "Because someone once told me that everyone deserves a chance to do the right thing," he said finally. "Even people who don't deserve it." Danny nodded slowly. "You're a better man than me, Marcus Webb." "No." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "I'm just a man trying to do right by his family, by his friends, by himself." He looked around his shop, and felt something warm bloom in his chest. "Now let's get to work. We've got a lot to do." That night, Marcus picked Chloe up from school himself. She ran into his arms the moment she saw him babbling about her day, about the picture she'd drawn about the boy who'd tried to steal her crayons, but she'd told the teacher, and he'd gotten in trouble. Marcus listened to every word, drinking it in like water. "Daddy," she said as they drove home. "Yeah, baby." "You seem different today." "Different how?" Chloe thought about it. "Happier, like you used to be, before Mommy went to heaven." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "I am happier, sweetheart. Things are going to be better now. Because of your meeting, because of my meeting, and because of you." Chloe smiled that brilliant smile. "I'm glad, Daddy. You deserve to be happy." Marcus reached over and squeezed her hand. "So do you, baby. So do you." 3 weeks passed, and Marcus learned that running a business was nothing like fixing cars. Cars made sense. You diagnosed the problem, found the broken part, replaced it, and moved on. Simple, logical, predictable. People were different. People had feelings. People had egos. People had histories and grudges and complicated motivations that didn't show up on any diagnostic computer. And the most complicated person of all was Frank Harrison. Marcus arrived at the shop at 5:30 every morning now, an hour before anyone else. He used that time to review the books, check inventory, answer emails from suppliers. Tasks that had once been Frank's domain, now his responsibility. Frank still came to work every day. He clocked in at 6:00, changed into his coveralls, and took his place on the shop floor like any other mechanic. He didn't complain. He didn't argue. He just worked. It was unsettling. Marcus had expected resistance. He'd expected Frank to fight back, to undermine him, to make his life difficult in 1,000 small ways. That's what the old Frank would have done. But this Frank was different. Quieter. smaller somehow, like something essential had been drained out of him. On the fourth Monday of Marcus's management, Danny pulled him aside during lunch break. "We need to talk about Frank." Marcus set down his sandwich. "What about him?" "The guys are getting uncomfortable. He doesn't talk to anyone, doesn't eat with us, just sits in his car during breaks staring at nothing." Danny lowered his voice. "Mike thinks he's planning something, like revenge or whatever." "And what do you think?" Danny hesitated. "I think he's broken man. I've seen that look before. My uncle had it after he lost his business. It's the look of a man who doesn't know who he is anymore." Marcus thought about that. He thought about the Frank he'd known for 15 years, arrogant, controlling, always needing to be the smartest person in the room. And he thought about the Frank he saw now shuffling through the shop with his head down, flinching whenever someone spoke to him. "I'll talk to him," Marcus said. "You sure that's a good idea?" "No, but I'm going to do it anyway." Marcus found Frank in his car during the afternoon break, just like Danny had said. The engine was off, the windows cracked, and Frank was sitting in the driver's seat with his eyes closed. Marcus knocked on the window. Frank's eyes snapped open. For a moment, something flickered across his face, fear maybe, or shame. Then it was gone, replaced by the blank expression he'd worn for 3 weeks. He rolled down the window. "What do you want? Can we talk? About what?" "About you. About how you're doing." Frank let out a bitter laugh. "How I'm doing? I'm working for the guy I fired. The guy whose wife's memory I insulted. The guy who could have destroyed me but chose to humiliate me instead." He shook his head. "How do you think I'm doing?" Marcus didn't rise to the bait. "Can I get in?" Frank stared at him for a long moment. Then wordlessly, he reached over and unlocked the passenger door. Marcus climbed in. The car smelled like old coffee and cigarette smoke, even though Frank had supposedly quit years ago. A pack of Marlboros sat in the cup holder half empty. "Started again last week," Frank said, noticing Marcus's glance. "Figured it didn't matter anymore." "It matters." "Does it?" "My career is over. My reputation is destroyed. I'm 52 years old and I'm working as a mechanic in a shop I used to own." Frank's voice cracked. "What's the point of anything?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. He'd come here planning to deliver a lecture to tell Frank to shape up or ship out. But sitting here now, seeing the man up close, he felt something unexpected. Compassion. "Can I tell you something?" Marcus asked. Frank shrugged. "Not like I can stop you. 3 years ago when Sarah died, I wanted to give up. I wanted to crawl into a hole and never come out. The only thing that kept me going was Chloe. I had to get up every morning because she needed me. I had to keep working because she needed food and clothes and a roof over her head." Frank was listening now, his eyes on Marcus's face. "But there were nights," Marcus continued, "when I sat in my truck after work, just like you're sitting here now, and I thought about driving into a bridge abutment, about ending it, about escaping the pain." Frank's expression shifted. Surprise. Recognition. "You never told anyone that?" "No, I didn't." Marcus took a breath. "The point is, I understand what it feels like to lose everything, to feel like there's no way forward. But there is a way forward, Frank. There always is. You just have to be willing to take it." "Easy for you to say. You got handed a business by a billionaire." "I got handed an opportunity, one I earned by doing the right thing when nobody was watching." Marcus turned to face Frank directly. "You can earn that too. It's not too late." Frank was quiet. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. "I don't know how," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to be anything other than what I was." "Then learn. That's what I'm doing. Every day I'm learning how to be a manager, how to run a business, how to lead people. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. But it's possible." Marcus paused. "The question is whether you're willing to try." Frank didn't answer immediately. He stared out the windshield at the shop at the building where he'd spent 15 years building something that had ultimately collapsed under the weight of his own failures. "Why do you even care?" he asked. "After everything I did to you, why do you give a damn what happens to me?" It was a fair question. Marcus had asked himself the same thing. "Because holding on to anger is exhausting," he said. "Because my daughter watches everything I do, and I want her to see a father who forgives instead of one who destroys. And because—" he hesitated. "Because I know what it's like to need a second chance. Someone gave me one. The least I can do is pass it on." Frank's jaw tightened. For a moment, Marcus thought he was going to break down, really break down, tears and all. But Frank Harrison wasn't that kind of man. Not yet, anyway. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," Frank said. "Maybe not, but you're getting it anyway." Marcus opened the car door. "Break's over in 5 minutes. I expect you back on the floor." He got out and walked toward the shop, not looking back. Behind him, he heard Frank's car door open and close, the sound of footsteps following. That evening, Walter Brennan called. "How are things at the shop?" Marcus was sitting at the kitchen table, helping Chloe with her homework. He tucked the phone between his ear and shoulder and continued pointing at the math problems. "Getting better. Slowly." "And Frank?" "We talked today. Really talked for the first time." "How did it go?" Marcus thought about the conversation, about the broken man in the car, about the footsteps that had followed him back into the shop. "I think he's starting to understand," Marcus said. "It's going to take time, but I think there's hope." "That's more than I expected." Walter paused. "You're handling this better than I would have at your age." "I had a good teacher." "You mean Sarah?" Marcus smiled. "I mean everyone. Sarah. My father. Eleanor. Even you, Mr. Brennan." "Walter. Walter." There was warmth in the old man's voice when he spoke again. "I'm proud of you, Marcus. I want you to know that." "Thank you." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "That means more than you know." "I'll be in Columbus next week. I'd like to take you and Chloe to dinner, if you're free." "We'd like that." "Good. I'll have Diana send the details." A pause. "And Marcus." "Yeah. Keep up the good work. The shop isn't just a business anymore. It's a symbol of what's possible when good people are given a chance." After they hung up, Chloe looked up from her homework. "Who was that, Daddy?" "A friend." "The old man who helped you get your job back?" "That's the one." Chloe nodded thoughtfully. "He sounds nice. Can I meet him?" "Next week. He's taking us to dinner." Her face lit up. "Really? Where?" "I don't know yet, but I'm sure it'll be somewhere special." "Can I wear my princess dress?" Marcus laughed. "We'll see." "That means yes." "That means we'll see." Chloe grinned and went back to her math problems, humming softly to herself. Marcus watched her for a moment, this little person who had become his entire world. She was so much like Sarah, the same determination, the same stubbornness, the same ability to find joy in the smallest things. He wondered what Sarah would think of all this. The shop. The new responsibility. The strange turn his life had taken in the span of a month. He liked to think she'd be proud. The next 2 weeks brought changes Marcus hadn't anticipated. Word had spread about what happened at Webb & Sons Auto Repair. The story of the mechanic who got fired for helping a stranger, only to have that stranger turn out to be the building's owner, had taken on a life of its own. Customers who hadn't visited the shop in years started coming back. New customers appeared curious about the place they'd heard about from friends and neighbors. Revenue increased, not dramatically, but noticeably. Enough that Marcus could start thinking about equipment upgrades, about hiring additional staff, about all the improvements he'd been dreaming about for years. But, with success came new challenges. The first came in the form of a phone call from a man named Richard Brennan. Marcus was in the office reviewing invoices when his cell phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Marcus Webb. The voice was sharp, clipped with an edge that immediately put Marcus on guard. Speaking. This is Richard Brennan, Walter's son. Marcus sat up straighter. Walter had mentioned a son once briefly in passing, but he'd never gone into detail, and Marcus hadn't pressed. Mr. Brennan, what can I do for you? You can explain to me why my father is giving away company assets to strangers. The words hit like a slap. Excuse me. The lease transfer for that auto shop, the startup fund, the mentorship arrangement. Richard's voice dripped with contempt. My father has apparently decided that you're more worthy of his attention than his own family. I don't know anything about your family situation, Mr. Brennan, but I can assure you I didn't ask your father for anything. He offered. Of course he did. That's what he does. He finds broken people and tries to fix them like they're one of his precious charity cases. A bitter laugh. He couldn't fix his own son, so now he's trying to fix you. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced it down. I'm sorry you feel that way. I don't need your sorry. I need you to understand something. Richard's voice lowered. My father is 81 years old. His health isn't what it used to be. And when he dies, I'm going to inherit Brennan Holdings. All of it. Including the building you're currently squatting in. I'm not squatting. I have a legitimate lease agreement. An agreement that can be reviewed, renegotiated, terminated if I find grounds. Richard paused, letting the threat sink in. Enjoy your little kingdom while it lasts, Mr. Webb. It won't last forever. The line went dead. Marcus sat there, phone in hand, his mind racing. He'd known on some level that this couldn't be simple, that Walter's generosity would have consequences he couldn't foresee. But he hadn't expected this, a direct threat from the man who would eventually control everything. He thought about calling Walter, telling him about the conversation. But something stopped him. Walter had enough on his plate dealing with whatever complicated family dynamics had produced a son like Richard. The last thing he needed was Marcus adding to his stress. No. Marcus would handle this himself. Somehow. He just had no idea how. That night Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Richard Brennan's words echoing in his head. Enjoy your little kingdom while it lasts. What did that mean? Was it just an empty threat from a jealous son, or was there something more behind it? At 2:00 a.m. he gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen to make coffee. He was standing at the counter waiting for the pot to brew when his phone buzzed. A text from Walter. I heard Richard called you. I'm sorry. Can we talk tomorrow? Marcus typed back. How did you know? Diana monitors unusual calls to key partners. Richard's number flagged. Key partners. That's what you are now, Marcus, whether you like it or not. Marcus stared at the message. Key partner. It was a strange phrase, corporate and impersonal, but somehow it felt like more than that. We can talk tomorrow, he typed. I have questions. I'm sure you do. 10 a.m. at the shop. I'll be there. Marcus set down his phone and poured himself a cup of coffee. He had a feeling tomorrow was going to be a long day. Walter arrived at exactly 10:00. His black sedan pulling into the parking lot with the precision of a Swiss watch. Marcus met him at the door. The old man looked tired today, his face more lined than Marcus remembered, his movements slower. Let's talk in the office, Walter said. They walked past the shop floor, past Danny and Mike and the other mechanics, who waved respectfully past Frank, who kept his head down and focused on his work. In the office, Marcus closed the door and sat down across from Walter. Tell me about Richard. Walter sighed. I was hoping to avoid this conversation. So was I. But your son called me yesterday and basically threatened to destroy everything the moment you're gone. That sounds like Richard. Walter rubbed his eyes. My son and I have a complicated history. I gathered. He blames me for his brother's death. Michael. Walter's voice caught on the name. They were close. Closer than Richard and I ever were. When Michael died, Richard decided it was my fault. He's never forgiven me. Is it your fault? The question hung in the air. Walter was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, he said finally. Some days I think yes, I should have listened when Michael came to me. I should have intervened. Other days I think no, Michael made his own choices, and I can't carry the weight of them forever. He looked at Marcus. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Richard said you try to fix broken people because you couldn't fix your own son. Walter flinched. He's not entirely wrong. Is that what I am to you? A broken person you're trying to fix? No. Walter's eyes met his, steady and sincere. You're not broken, Marcus. You're one of the most whole people I've ever met. That's why I chose you. Then why? Why all of this? The shop, the mentorship, the investment. What do you get out of it? Walter stood and walked to the window. He stared out at the parking lot, at the cars waiting to be fixed at the business that now bore Marcus's name. When I was your age, I had nothing, he said. No money, no connections, no future. I was working 3 jobs just to keep a roof over my head. And then one day, a man I'd never met walked into the diner where I was bussing tables. He sat down, ordered a cup of coffee, and started talking to me. Marcus listened, sensing this was important. He asked about my life, my dreams, what I wanted to do with myself. I told him I wanted to own my own business someday, but I didn't have the money or the education. He laughed and said money and education were overrated. What mattered was character, work ethic, integrity. Walter turned to face Marcus. That man's name was Harold Webb, your grandfather. Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the chest. What? Harold Webb gave me my first loan, $5,000, which was a fortune back then. He didn't ask for collateral or interest. He just believed in me. Walter's voice was thick with emotion. I built Brennan Holdings on that loan, on the trust of a man who saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. I had no idea. Your grandfather never told anyone. He wasn't the kind of man who needed credit. He just did good things because they were good. Walter walked back to his chair and sat down heavily. I've been trying to pay that debt forward for 50 years, Marcus. Every time I help someone, I think of Harold. I think of what he did for me. Marcus was speechless. All this time he'd thought Walter's generosity was random, a billionaire's whim, a response to a chance encounter on a rainy highway. But it was more than that. It was a debt, a legacy, a connection that spanned generations. My grandfather died when I was 12, Marcus said quietly. I barely remember him. He was a good man, the best I ever knew. Walter reached across the desk and gripped Marcus's hand. And his grandson is just like him. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of history pressing down on them both. Finally, Marcus asked the question he'd been avoiding. What about Richard? What happens when... He couldn't finish the sentence. When I die. Walter smiled sadly. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. My health isn't what it used to be. The doctors say I have maybe 2 years, maybe 5, maybe more if I'm lucky. I'm sorry. Don't be. I've had a good life, a long life. I've built things, helped people, made a difference. He paused. The only thing I regret is Richard. The relationship we never had. The bridge I could never rebuild. Maybe it's not too late. Maybe. Walter didn't sound convinced. But regardless of what happens with Richard, I want you to know that I've taken steps to protect you. The lease is ironclad. The startup fund is held in trust. Even if Richard wanted to, he couldn't take the shop away from you. Marcus felt a wave of relief. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep doing what you're doing. Build something your grandfather would be proud of. Walter stood up. Now I believe I promised Chloe a dinner. Is this Saturday still good? Marcus smiled. She's been talking about it all week. She picked out her princess dress and everything. Walter laughed, a real laugh, warm and genuine. Then Saturday it is. I'll pick you both up at 6. He walked to the door, then paused. Marcus. Yeah. Harold would be proud of you. I know it. He opened the door. I'm proud of you too. And then he was gone, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the ghost of a grandfather he barely remembered. The rest of the week passed quickly. Marcus threw himself into work, using the busyness to distract himself from everything Walter had told him. The revelation about his grandfather, the threat from Richard, the complicated web of history and obligation that now surrounded him. Frank, surprisingly, was the one who noticed. It was Friday afternoon, and Marcus was in the office staring at the same spreadsheet he'd been staring at for an hour when there was a knock on the door. Yeah. Frank stepped in. He looked different than he had a month ago, cleaner somehow, more present. His eyes weren't as hollow. Got a minute? Sure. Frank closed the door and sat down across from Marcus. You look like hell. Thanks. I'm serious. Something's eating at you. Has been all week. Frank paused. I know we're not exactly friends, but I've been where you are, carrying something heavy, trying to pretend everything's fine. It doesn't work. Marcus almost laughed at the irony. Frank Harrison, of all people, trying to offer emotional support. It's complicated. Most things are. Marcus studied the man across from him. The Frank he'd known for 15 years would never have sat here like this, offering to listen. That Frank only cared about himself. But this Frank was different, changed. Whether by humiliation or redemption or something else entirely, Marcus couldn't say. Mr. Brennan's son called me last week. Marcus heard himself say. Threatened to take everything away when his father dies. Frank's expression darkened. Richard Brennan. You know him. I know of him. He's got a reputation in the industry, ruthless, vindictive. The kind of guy who'd burn down his own house just to spite the neighbors. Great. What did Mr. Brennan say? That he's taken steps to protect me. That Richard can't touch the shop. Then why are you worried? Marcus leaned back in his chair. Because nothing is ever that simple. Because people like Richard don't give up. Because I've got a daughter who depends on me, and I can't afford to lose everything again. Frank was quiet for a moment. Then slowly he nodded. You know what I've learned these past few weeks? What? That the worst thing that can happen to you isn't always the worst thing. Frank's voice was thoughtful, almost reflective. I thought losing this shop was the end of the world. I thought working for you would be the ultimate humiliation. But it's not. It's just different. A different path than the one I planned. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to remind you that you've survived worse. Frank leaned forward. You lost your wife. You raised a daughter alone. You got fired by an asshole who didn't appreciate you. And you came out the other side. Stronger. Better. Marcus stared at him. This was the longest, most genuine conversation they'd ever had. Why are you telling me this? Frank shrugged. Because you gave me a second chance when I didn't deserve one. Because you're the first person in a long time who saw me as something other than a villain. He paused. Because maybe I'm finally learning to be the person I should have been all along. Marcus didn't know what to say. Whatever happens with Richard Brennan, Frank continued, you don't have to face it alone. You've got people here who believe in you. Danny, Mike, the rest of the guys. He hesitated. Me if you want. You. I know it sounds crazy. A month ago I was trying to destroy you. But people change, Marcus. You taught me that. Frank stood up. Think about it. He walked to the door. Frank. The man turned. Thank you, Marcus said. For all of that. Frank nodded once, then left. Marcus sat alone in the office, the spreadsheet forgotten. Frank's words echoing in his head. You don't have to face it alone. Maybe he was right. Maybe the key to surviving whatever came next wasn't strength or strategy or luck. Maybe it was simply letting people in. Saturday came, and with it, the dinner Marcus had been both anticipating and dreading. Walter's driver picked them up at 600 sharp. Chloe was bouncing with excitement in her princess dress, a pink confection of tulle and sparkles that she'd been saving for a special occasion. "This is definitely special," she'd declared when Marcus asked if she was sure she wanted to wear it. The restaurant was in a part of Columbus Marcus had never visited. Quiet streets, old buildings, the kind of place where a single meal probably cost more than his grocery bill for a month. Walter was waiting at the table dressed in a simple gray suit, a warm smile on his face. "Chloe," he said, standing to greet them. "You look absolutely beautiful." Chloe beamed. "Thank you, Mr. Brennan. I like your tie. It has little stars on it. I wore it just for you. I heard you like stars." They sat down, and Chloe immediately began peppering Walter with questions. About his job, about his house, about whether he had any grandchildren, about whether he liked horses, because she really liked horses. Walter answered each question with patience and grace, his eyes crinkling with genuine amusement. Marcus watched them, something warm spreading through his chest. This was what family looked like. Not blood necessarily, but connection, care, people who showed up for each other. Sarah would have loved this, he thought. She would have loved seeing Chloe so happy, so comfortable with this strange old man who had wandered into their lives. "Daddy?" Marcus blinked. "Yeah, baby." "Mr. Brennan says he has a picture of Grandpa Harold. Can we see it?" Marcus looked at Walter, surprised. "I carry it with me," Walter said quietly. "Always have." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. From inside, he extracted a small faded photograph. He handed it to Marcus. The photo showed two young men standing in front of a building. One was clearly Walter, 50 years younger, with dark hair and a confident smile. The other was... "That's him," Marcus whispered. "That's my grandfather." Harold Webb looked exactly like Marcus remembered from old family photos. The same strong jaw, the same kind eyes, the same posture of quiet dignity. "Taken in 1975, Walter said. "The day he gave me the loan. I've kept it ever since." Chloe leaned over to look. "He looks like you, Daddy." Marcus felt tears prick at his eyes. "Yeah, he does." Walter reached across the table and placed his hand over Marcus's. "He's proud of you," Walter said softly. "Wherever he is, he's proud." Marcus looked at the old man who had changed his life, at his daughter, who was his reason for living, at the photograph of a grandfather he barely knew, whose single act of kindness had echoed across decades. "Thank you," Marcus said, "for everything." Walter smiled. "Thank your grandfather. I'm just finishing what he started." 6 months changed everything. Marcus stood at the entrance of Webb & Sons Auto Repair on a crisp April morning, watching the sunrise paint the building in shades of gold and pink. The shop looked different now. New sign, freshly painted walls, updated equipment visible through the clean windows. But it wasn't just the physical changes that mattered. It was the feeling, the energy, the sense that this place was alive again. His phone buzzed. A text from Danny. "Running 5 minutes late. Emma's got a doctor's appointment. Everything okay?" Marcus smiled and typed back, "Take your time. Family first." Family first. That had become the unofficial motto of the new Webb & Sons. It was painted on a small plaque that hung in the break room right next to the photo of Marcus's grandfather and Walter Brennan from 1975. The door opened behind him, and Frank stepped out, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Thought you might need this." Marcus took the cup. "Thanks." They stood together in silence, watching the early morning traffic on the street. 6 months ago, this moment would have been unthinkable. Frank Harrison, the man who had humiliated Marcus in front of everyone, now standing beside him as an ally, as something approaching a friend. "You hear from Walter lately?" Frank asked. "Yesterday. He's doing another round of treatments. Says the doctors are optimistic." "That's good." Frank took a sip of his coffee. He's a tough old bastard. He is. Another silence. Comfortable this time. I've been thinking, Frank said. About what? About everything. The shop. You. What happened? He paused. I never properly apologized. Not really. I said the words, but I didn't mean them. Not back then. Marcus turned to look at him. And now. Now I mean them. Frank met his eyes. I'm sorry, Marcus. For all of it. For the way I treated you. For what I said about Sarah. For being so consumed by my own ego that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. What was right in front of you? A good man. A man who deserved better than what I gave him. Frank's voice cracked slightly. I spent 15 years running this place, and I never once stopped to think about the people who worked here. They were just tools, means to an end. But you showed me they're more than that. We're all more than that. Marcus didn't respond immediately. He thought about the journey that had brought them here. The pain, the humiliation, the unexpected redemption. I forgive you, Frank, he said finally. I forgave you a long time ago, but hearing you say it, that means something. Frank nodded, his jaw tight with emotion. Thank you. Now finish your coffee. We've got cars to fix. Frank laughed, a real laugh, warm and genuine. Yes, boss. They walked back inside together, side by side. The day passed like most days at the shop, busy, chaotic, rewarding. Marcus handled a dispute with a supplier, mediated a minor disagreement between two mechanics, and personally oversaw the repair of a vintage Mustang that belonged to a customer who'd been coming to the shop since Marcus's father's time. At noon, his phone rang. Diana Chen's name flashed on the screen. Diana, what's up? Mr. Webb, I have some news. Her voice was carefully neutral, the way it always was when she was delivering important information. Richard Brennan has requested a meeting with you. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. A meeting? Tomorrow afternoon, at his office in Cleveland. Did he say what it's about? No, but I should tell you that Mr. Brennan Walter has been made aware of the request. He asked me to tell you something. What? Trust yourself. You'll know what to do. The line went silent for a moment. Diana, what do you think this is about? Another pause, then quietly. I think Richard is testing you. He's been watching what you've done with the shop, the improvements, the revenue increases, the way you've handled Frank. She hesitated. I think he's trying to figure out if you're a threat or an asset. Which am I? That's what he wants to find out. Marcus sat in the office for a long time after the call ended, staring at the wall where he'd hung a framed copy of the lease agreement. His name was on it now. Marcus Webb, proprietor. His father's dream, his grandfather's legacy, now in his hands. He picked up his phone and dialed Eleanor Patterson. Marcus, everything all right? Yeah, I need some advice. I'm listening. He told her about Richard, about the meeting, about the fear that had been gnawing at him for months, that everything he'd built could be taken away by a man who saw him as nothing more than a charity case. Eleanor was quiet until he finished. Then she said, Do you remember what Sarah used to say when you were worried about something? Marcus closed his eyes. She'd say, the worst thing that can happen is never as bad as you think. And the best thing is usually better than you can imagine. She was right. She was always right about things like that. Eleanor's voice was warm. Go to the meeting, Marcus. Hear what Richard has to say. Don't let fear make your decisions for you. What if he wants to take everything? Then you'll deal with it. You'll find another way. Because that's what you do. She paused. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. Why not? Because Walter Brennan didn't choose you by accident. He saw something in you. Something strong, something real. And I think deep down Richard sees it too. He just doesn't want to admit it yet. Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Thank you, Eleanor. Go get him, Tiger. The drive to Cleveland took 2 hours. Marcus spent most of it in silence, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The rainy night on Highway 41. The firing. The redemption. The shop that now bore his family's name. Richard Brennan's office was in a glass tower downtown, even larger and more imposing than the Brennan Holdings headquarters in Columbus. Marcus took the elevator to the top floor, his heart pounding in his chest. A receptionist led him to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Richard was standing at one of them, his back to the door. "Mr. Webb, thank you for coming. You didn't give me much choice." Richard turned. He was younger than Marcus expected, mid-50s maybe. Sharp features, expensive suit eyes that calculated everything they saw. But there was something else in those eyes too. Something that looked almost like uncertainty. "Please sit." Marcus sat. Richard remained standing, pacing slowly around the office. "I'm going to be honest with you," Richard said. "When my father told me about you, I was furious. Here was this stranger, this mechanic, and my father was treating him like the son he never had." He laughed bitterly, which was ironic, considering he already had a son. "I'm not trying to replace anyone. I know that now." Richard stopped pacing and faced Marcus directly. "I've spent the last 6 months watching you, reading reports, talking to people who've worked with you. Do you know what everyone says? No. They say you're honest, that you work harder than anyone they've ever met, that you treat people with respect regardless of who they are." Richard's jaw tightened. "They say you're exactly like your grandfather." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "You knew about my grandfather. I've known about Harold Webb my whole life. My father never stopped talking about him. The man who gave him a chance when no one else would. The man who believed in him when he had nothing." Richard's voice was thick with old resentment. "I used to hate that story. I used to think my father loved Harold Webb more than he loved me. That's not true. I know that now." Richard walked to his desk and sat down heavily. "My brother Michael was always the favorite. He was kind like our father, good with people. I was the practical one, the one who understood business money strategy. My father needed both of us, but he only loved one." Marcus didn't respond. This wasn't his story to comment on. "When Michael died, I blamed my father. I blamed everyone." Richard's voice cracked. "And I spent the next 12 years trying to prove that I was better than Michael. Smarter, more successful, more worthy of my father's respect. Did it work?" "No." Richard laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Nothing worked, because I was trying to earn something that was already mine. My father loved me. He always loved me. I was just too blind and angry to see it." He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a folder. He slid it across the desk to Marcus. "What's this? Open it." Marcus opened the folder. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a letter handwritten. "Dear Richard, if you're reading this, it means I've finally told you the truth about Marcus Webb. I know you've been angry. I know you've seen him as a threat. But I need you to understand why I helped him. 50 years ago, a man named Harold Webb saved my life. Not physically, but in every way that matters. He gave me hope when I had none. He believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. And he asked for nothing in return. Marcus is Harold's grandson. He has the same heart, the same integrity, the same quiet strength. When I met him on that highway, I saw Harold looking back at me, and I knew I had a chance to repay a debt that had been weighing on me for half a century. I'm not choosing Marcus over you. I'm not replacing Michael. I'm simply doing what Harold would have done, helping someone who deserves a chance. You are my son. I love you more than you know, and I'm sorry I never found the words to tell you while I could. Please, Richard, don't let anger define you. Don't let resentment poison the rest of your life. Find a way to see Marcus not as a rival, but as an ally, a friend, perhaps even a brother. That's what I want. That's what Michael would have wanted. And I believe deep down it's what you want too. With all my love, Dad." Marcus read the letter twice. Then he looked up at Richard. When did he give you this? Last week, during one of his treatments. Richard's eyes were red. He made me promise to read it. To really read it, not just skim it and throw it away. And he was right. About everything. Richard took a shaky breath. I've spent months planning how to destroy you, Marcus. How to take back what I thought you'd stolen, but reading this letter, sitting with my father while he fights for his life, I realized I was wrong. Marcus waited. You're not my enemy. You're not a threat. You're just a man who did a good thing and got rewarded for it. Richard leaned forward. My father spent his whole life looking for Harold Webb's heir, someone worthy of his trust, his investment, his legacy. And he found you. What does that mean? It means I'm not going to fight you anymore. It means the shop is yours free and clear no matter what happens. Richard paused. And it means I'm asking for something I never thought I'd ask for. What? Your forgiveness. Richard's voice broke. For the threats, for the hostility, for being the kind of man my father would be ashamed of. Marcus looked at the man across from him. The son of Walter Brennan, the brother of Michael. A man who had spent his whole life carrying wounds he didn't know how to heal. And Marcus thought about everything Sarah had taught him, everything his grandfather had stood for, everything Walter had shown him about the power of second chances. I forgive you, Marcus said. Richard closed his eyes. A single tear ran down his cheek. Thank you. 2 weeks later, Walter Brennan came to Columbus. His health had improved slightly enough for him to travel. He asked Marcus to meet him at the shop early in the morning before it opened. When Marcus arrived, Walter was already there standing in front of the building, looking up at the sign. Webb & Sons Auto Repair. It's beautiful, Walter said. It's because of you. No. Walter shook his head. It's because of you. I just gave you the opportunity. You did the rest. They walked inside together. The shop was empty quiet, the equipment gleaming in the early morning light. Walter moved slowly, his hand trailing along the workbenches, the tool cabinets, the lifts where Marcus had spent 23 years of his life. Your grandfather would be proud, Walter said. I hope so. I know so. Walter turned to face him. I have something for you. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a key, old brass, worn smooth by decades of handling. This was the key to Harold's first shop, Walter explained. He gave it to me the day I paid back my loan. He said it was a symbol. That success wasn't about money or power, but about what you build, what you leave behind. Marcus took the key. It was warm in his palm, heavy with history. I want you to have it, Walter said, to remind you where you came from, and where you're going. Where am I going? Walter smiled. Wherever you want. The future is yours now, Marcus. Build something beautiful with it. 6 more months passed. The shop continued to grow. Revenue doubled. Marcus hired 4 new mechanics, including 2 women, the first female mechanics in the shop's history. He started a training program for young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, teaching them skills that could change their lives. Frank became the shop's lead technician responsible for the most complex repairs. He was good at it, better than Marcus had expected. The humiliation had burned away his arrogance, leaving behind something stronger, something real. Danny got married. Mike had a baby. Eleanor Patterson celebrated her 70th birthday with a party at the shop surrounded by people who loved her. And Chloe turned 8. Her birthday party was held at the shop after hours. Balloons everywhere, cake and ice cream. Kids running between the lifts playing hide and seek among the equipment. Marcus stood off to the side watching his daughter blow out her candles, her face lit with joy. Make a wish, baby. Chloe closed her eyes, squeezed them tight, and blew. All 8 candles went out at once. What did you wish for? Her friend Emma asked. I can't tell you. Then it won't come true. Later, after the other kids had gone home and Chloe was helping Marcus clean up, she tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy." "Yeah? Can I tell you my wish now?" "Sure, sweetheart." Chloe looked up at him with those big brown eyes, Sarah's eyes, and smiled. "I wished that you would always be as happy as you are right now." Marcus felt his heart crack open. He knelt down and pulled his daughter into a hug, holding her tight against his chest. "I will be baby. I promise. Really. Really. Because I have you. And that makes me the happiest man in the world." 1 year to the day after Marcus Webb stopped on Highway 41 to help a stranger in the rain, he received a phone call. It was Diana Chen. "Mr. Webb, I'm calling to inform you that Walter Brennan passed away this morning, peacefully in his sleep." Marcus sat down heavily, the breath going out of him. "He asked me to give you a message." Diana continued, her voice steady despite the grief beneath it. He said, "Tell Marcus thank you for reminding an old man what matters, for finishing what Harold started, for being the son I never knew I needed." Marcus couldn't speak. Tears streamed down his face. "The funeral will be this Saturday," Diana said. "Mr. Brennan requested that you give the eulogy." "Me?" He was very specific. He said you were the only one who truly understood him. The funeral was held at a small church in Columbus. Hundreds of people attended: business associates, employees, friends, family. Richard Brennan sat in the front row, his wife beside him, his children surrounding him. When he saw Marcus, he stood and embraced him. "Thank you for being here. I wouldn't be anywhere else." When the time came for the eulogy, Marcus walked to the podium on shaky legs. He looked out at the sea of faces, some familiar, most not, and took a deep breath. "I knew Walter Brennan for exactly 1 year, he began. "But in that year he changed my life. He changed who I am. He changed what I believe is possible." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "Walter found me on a highway in the rain. My car had stopped to help him, and that single act of kindness set in motion a chain of events that I still can't fully comprehend. He gave me a business. He gave me a future. He gave me something I didn't even know I needed: hope." Marcus looked at Richard, who was watching him with tears in his eyes. "But Walter didn't just give things. He taught things. He taught me that success isn't measured by money or power, but by the lives you touch, the people you help, the legacy you leave behind." He looked at the photograph of Walter that stood on the altar, the same sharp eyes, the same gentle smile. 50 years ago, my grandfather gave Walter Brennan $5,000 and changed his life. Today I stand here as proof that kindness echoes, that one good deed can ripple across generations, that the people we help go on to help others, and the chain never breaks. He took a shaky breath. Walter Brennan was not perfect. He made mistakes. He had regrets. But he spent his whole life trying to be better, trying to do right by the people around him. And in the end, that's all any of us can do. Marcus looked out at the crowd one final time. "Rest now, Walter. Your work is done. But the seeds you planted will keep growing. I promise you that." The drive home from the funeral was quiet. Chloe sat in the passenger seat, still wearing her black dress, her hand resting on Marcus's arm. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby." "Is Mr. Brennan in heaven now with Mommy?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Yeah, sweetheart. I think he is." "Do you think they're friends?" Marcus smiled through his tears. "I think they're the best of friends." They pulled into the parking lot of Webb & Sons Auto Repair. The shop was closed for the day out of respect for Walter, but Marcus wanted to stop by anyway. He got out of the truck and walked to the front of the building, Chloe's hand in his. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The new sign gleamed in the fading light. Webb & Sons Auto Repair. Where kindness is our trade. They'd added that second line a month ago. Marcus's idea. Walter had loved it. "Daddy, look." Chloe was pointing at something on the ground. A small bird hopping along the sidewalk, unafraid. "It's a robin," Marcus said. "First one I've seen this spring. Mommy always said robins were good luck." "She did." Chloe looked up at him. "Do you think this one is from Mr. Brennan? Like a message?" Marcus watched the bird hop a few more steps, then spread its wings and fly away, disappearing into the golden sky. "Yeah, baby, I think maybe it is." That night, after Chloe was asleep, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with a pen and a piece of paper. He'd been putting this off for a year, never finding the right words. But tonight, finally he knew what he wanted to say. "Dear Sarah, it's been 4 years since you left us. 4 years of missing you every single day. But I want you to know something. I'm okay. Chloe is okay. We're more than okay. A lot has happened since you've been gone. I lost my job, found it again, and somehow ended up running your father's shop. I made enemies who became friends and found family in places I never expected. But the most important thing I learned is something you already knew, something you tried to teach me every day we were together. Kindness matters. It matters more than money, or success, or power. It matters more than being right, or being strong, or being smart. At the end of the day, the only thing that really matters is how we treat each other. The good we do, the love we give." I stopped to help a stranger in the rain, and it changed my life. Not because he turned out to be rich or powerful, but because he reminded me of who I am, who you helped me become. I'm going to keep doing good things, Sarah. For Chloe. For you. For everyone who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. And someday when it's my turn to go, I hope you'll be waiting for me. You and Walter and my grandfather and everyone else who's watching over us. Until then, I'll keep the light on. I love you. Forever. Marcus. He folded the letter and placed it in the drawer where he kept Sarah's anniversary cards. Then he turned off the light and walked to Chloe's room. She was sleeping peacefully, her stuffed rabbit clutched against her chest, a small smile on her face. Marcus bent down and kissed her forehead. "Good night, sweetheart." He walked to his own room and lay down on the bed staring at the ceiling. Outside, the spring rain was starting to fall, the same kind of rain that had been falling the night he stopped to help Walter Brennan. The night, everything changed. Marcus closed his eyes and listened to the rhythm of the drops against the window. Tomorrow he would open the shop. He would fix cars and manage employees and deal with suppliers and do all the things a business owner does. But tonight, he was just a father, a son, a grandson, a link in a chain that stretched back generations and would stretch forward into a future he couldn't imagine. The rain continued to fall gentle and steady, washing the world clean. And somewhere out there on a highway in the dark, someone else was stopping their car to help a stranger. The circle of kindness keeps turning. It doesn't need a reason. It only needs someone brave enough to start it and someone wise enough to keep it going. Marcus Webb was both. And that made all the difference.